All right, so you guys want to talk about Kamala Harris.
Let's do it.
Okay, so you send over a bunch of articles from September 19th and 20th, BBC News, USA Today, even Yahoo News, and they're all talking about this comment Vice President Kamala Harris made about gun ownership. And it sounds like you want to really get into it, not just the words themselves, but the context, her stance on gun control and how everybody's reacting.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's do it.
It's interesting how this kind of offhand remark has really ignited a firestorm. Especially right in the thick of the 2024 election. It's it touches on this really sensitive nerve in American culture.
Yeah.
The whole debate around the Second Amendment, personal safety, government control, it's a really personal issue for people.
For sure. Okay, so set the scene for us. Kamala Harris is being interviewed by Oprah, which is not exactly a low-key event. This is a big town hall thing. Yeah. J-Lo was even there.
300,000 viewers tuned in live, so it wasn't exactly a private conversation. And this wasn't the first time that Harris's position on gun control had raised eyebrows during this election. Remember that kind of tense debate moment last week when she denied Trump's accusation that she was going to confiscate everybody's gun if she's elected?
Yeah.
So this Oprah interview, it was kind of a chance for her to clarify her stance.
Yeah.
But instead
she drops this line. If somebody breaks into my house, they're getting shot.
Yeah.
And even she seemed kind of surprised by her own words. She was like, probably should not have said that.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating. It wasn't a carefully worded, policy statement. It felt very visceral, in the moment.
Oh.
Which is interesting because, as you know, Harris has been very vocal in her support for stricter gun laws, specifically background checks and an assault weapons ban.
Which makes you wonder, what was going through her head when she said it, and how does this square with her own history as a gun owner?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of why this comment struck such a chord with people. It wasn't just about policy. It was about personal experience and belief.
For sure. It kind of highlights this contradiction we seem to be grappling with here in America.
Yeah.
Right? Can you be both a gun owner and someone who supports more gun control?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because it's not uncommon at all. A lot of people believe in responsible gun ownership. And for them, that includes supporting certain regulations. Take background checks, for example. A 2023 Pew Research Center poll found that over 80% of Americans, including a majority of gun owners actually, support universal background checks.
Wow. So that's been Harris's stance all along. In fact, during that second presidential debate, she specifically called for universal background checks, saying, it's not about taking away anyone's rights. It's about keeping guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
Exactly. And this isn't a new position for her either. Back in 2019, when she was still a senator, she co-sponsored a bill that would have expanded background checks to cover all gun sales, including those at gun shows and online. I mean, her stance on this is pretty clear.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Harris has been open about the fact that she owns a gun herself.
Right.
For personal safety, which she's attributed to her time as a prosecutor.
Exactly. Her reasoning back in 2019 was that she needed it to protect herself, from potential threats related to her job. And this wasn't some secret she was hiding. She talked about it publicly, acknowledging, the complexity of the issue.
Which makes this whole "they're getting shot" comment even more interesting. It's on the one hand, she's this big advocate for gun control. And then on the other hand, she's also someone who owns a gun and is seemingly ready to use it. It's just it adds this whole other layer to the conversation.
Absolutely. And her opponents have definitely seized on this, this apparent contradiction, using it to paint her as inconsistent and untrustworthy. Remember that moment during the ABC News debate when the moderator brought up the whole buyback program for AR-15s? This was a policy Harris supported during the primaries, but she's since moved away from. It kind of feeds into this narrative that she's flip-flopping on her positions, which obviously doesn't look great when you're in the middle of a presidential campaign.
Totally, because that buyback program was, pretty controversial. Essentially, it would allow the government to, buy back certain types of semi-automatic rifles from people, and critics were saying it was a slippery slope towards government confiscation of firearms, while supporters saw it as a necessary step to reduce gun violence.
Exactly, and that's the challenge for Harris. She's trying to walk this really fine line, appealing to voters who want stricter gun control without alienating gun owners who feel like their rights are under attack. And in a political climate like ours, which is, let's face it, super polarized, that is a tough needle to thread.
For sure. And that's what they're trying to do, right? Capitalize on that whole she's not consistent thing, that she's saying one thing and doing another.
Exactly. It plays into this bigger thing they're building up,
Yeah.
questioning her judgment, her ability to be decisive, which, let's be real, those are big deals when you're talking about a president.
For sure. Especially with something like gun control. I mean, people have strong feelings about it on both sides.
Absolutely. And you know what's wild is how this one little comment during an interview that wasn't even really about guns has become this huge deal in the election. It's true.
It just shows you every word is under a microscope,
It's like this crazy pressure cooker, and one little thing can make it all explode.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes you think about the bigger issue too, right? How we talk about gun violence in this country.
Totally.
It's like we're stuck, pro-gun, anti-gun, no room for anything in between.
Right. It's almost like people are afraid to even talk about it.
Yeah, which is a shame because then you can't really have a real conversation, find solutions.
So what's the takeaway? We've talked about why Harris said what she said, where she stands, how her opponents are using it against her, but what about our listeners?
Well, for one, I think it shows you how powerful words are these days, right? Especially with social media and everything. Like one little thing can go viral and change everything.
And it's not just about this one comment. It's about thinking for yourself,
Not just taking our word for it.
or anyone's word for it. Look at those articles you send. Read them carefully. Make up your own mind.
Because at the end of the day, it's on us, right? To be informed, to get involved, to make our voices heard on the things that matter.
Exactly. And that's what this whole thing is about. Giving you guys the tools, the information you need to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on the political stuff with this "they're getting shot" comment, but it makes you think about something else too, something bigger.
What was that?
Well, does knowing that someone like Kamala Harris, who wants more gun control, also owns a gun and might use it, does that make you feel safer? Or does it make this whole gun violence thing feel even more complicated? It's something to think about,